Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarians Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's the Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
I gotta do this. It's gotta be the one. I gotta do this. It's gotta be me. It's gotta be.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm ready. Hey, does this suit make me look fat?
No. Your face does. Okay, let's check you out. All right.
It's a clip, Ma.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right, now, it's sale time, so remember, we don't take no...
No shit from anyone.
No?
We don't take no prisoners.
We don't take no for an answer.
Oh, yeah. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. No. Okie dokie.
All right, Julio, we're back. Back with Chris Farley. Back with David Spade. Back with Peter Siegel, director of Grudge Match. And I believe that's the only other one we've done of his. I put over Get Smart pretty often, but...
Because of The Rock.
That movie's just funny in general. Never seen Anger Management. Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, he was the director on. That movie was written by Barry Blaustein, who did Beyond the Mat. Tremendous pro wrestling documentary. But, you know, there's a lot of familiar faces in here. Dan Aykroyd, Brian Dennehy, Zach Grainer, Rob Lowe. It's a party. It's a 90s party, for absolute certain. This movie was released on March 31st of 1995, so just recently passing its 30th anniversary. Budget of $20 million with a box office return of close to $33 million. So the legacy of this movie, this is not a Dumb and Dumber. The Dumb and Dumber made like $250 million, if I remember correctly. It's not that, but it's held in the same regard as that. And I think it's a movie that definitely made its mark on the home video market, and then on subsequent, syndicated airings and whatnot, it collected an entire new audience. So Tommy Boy, one of the titans of 90s comedy, as I referred to it in Contrarian's Corner. I'm pretty interested to see how this Real Talk discussion goes. Before we get there, though, 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, reviled by some critics. And as we mentioned, you can check out our video over on YouTube covering Tommy Boy to hear more about Roger Ebert's disdain for Chris Farley's would-be run as a leading man.
The two movies he hated, Tommy Boy and Friday the 13th, those were the two movies he hated
from
the
most.
most.
The geniuses. Well, they're both Paramount too, so maybe you just had beef with Paramount. From the geniuses over at Paramount. Julio, which positive reviews did you pull for us?
Before we jump on the quotes, Alex, here's the question. If you flip the box office stakes, and Dumb and Dumber is the one that does the Tommy Boy numbers, Tommy Boy does the Dumb and Dumber numbers, does David Spade get the career that Jim Carrey did?
God, I don't know about all that. That scene where the dude tells David Spade, you're a smug, unhappy little man, and you treat people like they're idiots. I think that's the way a lot of people would feel about David Spade if you tried to make him a leading man. Well, with the exception of Joe Dirt, has he made any movies where he was the lead that did like at all well?
I don't think so. I think that's why, he doesn't have the career that Jim Carrey did, but there is an alternate universe where maybe he is the one in Dark Crimes, shocking us.
Emperor's New Groove, I guess you could say. But again, he's not in that like being David Spade.
Yeah, I don't think that you're selling that movie on the strength of David Spade being the Emperor, right? It's no, you're selling it as a Disney product. I don't know. We'll discuss David Spade. I'm sure we did way back when we did black sheep, but that was so long ago. We're different people.
Yeah,
So,
it's true.
all right, let's get some positive quotes. Alex Daniel Zolzman from Zolzy at the Movies says, Tommy Boy isn't a great film by any means, but Chris Farley and David Spade put on one hell of a show together. Sure you agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
Except it is a great movie.
Yeah. I would take umbrage with that part.
Next, Allison Rose from Flick Direct says, what makes Tommy Boy a comedy standout is the hilarious chemistry between Chris Farley and David Spade, elevating it to a cult classic. Every now and then we run into these movies that have been dubbed cult classics. And I think I always ask you, is it a cult classic, Alex? Would you consider this a cult classic?
I guess you could. For the relative lack of box office success it had, it could fall in line with that. Part
of the cult of Tommy. What's it? Cult of the Morons? They said in Contrarians Corner. We're going to close with Scott Weinberg from DVDtalk.com, who says, it's not high art, but it is pretty damn funny. And sometimes that's more than good enough. That's also a sentiment that's been shared on this show before. Sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to make the wheel spin consistently. Okay, with this, you would agree. It's not high art, Alex.
No.
And it shouldn't be.
But it's a feel-good movie that has a lot of just really silly comedy throughout and really quotable. So before we really get into it, I did something different this time with note-taking because this movie, as I mentioned, I could just kind of recite it. So my notes consisted of the lines of dialogue and references that I make to this, either still to this day in everyday life or have at some point in time, or have like stories attached to like a really good use of that. I already told the D+ story. Son of a, that's one. I'm just going in order here. Holy shnikes. I've said that so much in my life that I sometimes forget it came from this. Like I just sometimes think that's just an expression. You know, that it's like, where did it come from? Oh, yeah. And then I watched Tommy Boy. In fact, the version of this I watched was the DVD, the Holy Shnikes edition, which had a really good transfer on it, by the way. Herbie Hancock. Anytime someone says, can I get your John Hancock? I will reply, it's Herbie Hancock. D+, we covered that. A couple times I've committed to falling on a couch or a bed when my sister or my cousins are around, because we watched this movie with my cousins so much when I was younger. The part where Chris Farley takes that bong rip and he goes, we're going to show this world a thing or two. We're going to show, and then he just passes out mid-sentence and, you know, does that big fucking bump through the table. I don't know if ECW ever had a wrestler that took a table bump like Chris Farley, man, I'm telling you. If I can't hear someone giving a telephone number, I'll ask, did I catch a niner in there?
Okay, so it's not just Farley quotes. You're throwing in a little Spade too.
I have used in conversation in real life, and also it's something I use on Twitter quite often. If someone like praises something a wrestler did, but it took them like 8 years to do it, I'll use that David Spade line. And just a shade under a decade. All right. This is such a deep one that it's pretty much just me and my sister. If we're like on a road trip or driving through like a small town somewhere, I'll say what Farley says. He's like, the muffler plant's closed down too. Because it's a line of ADR that's always sounded really weird to me. When describing M&Ms, they have a thin candy shell. And this can be in reference to anything. But the line from this my dad probably quotes the most is from that same scene, the thin candy shell. He said, surprised you didn't know that. That's what Farley says to Spade about the candy. Shut up, Richard can be used in any context. David Spade refers to his office as the nerdery. I have said before in my life, I'm going to retreat to the nerdery. When Farley's shown his office, he fixates on the refrigerator, and the first thing he says is, you can put 6 packs of soda in it. And anytime I'm in a hotel room and see a mini fridge, that's immediately what I say, to varying degrees of understanding. And Brian Dennehy, the way he responds is, anything you want to keep cool. I don't know why that's so funny to me, but I have said that before too. Same scene where David Spade tells, he explains to Chris Farley what reading is. He says, Tylenol for any headaches, Midol for any cramps. Walks out of the room. I've retired this, but I did in college, high school. Big one was brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug. And I'm a hugger. People know that about me. When I saw Joe's brother in Vegas, he remembered from Chicago. He brought it in for the real thing. I've retired that because what I use now when someone I'm close with offers their hand. It's a line from Undeclared where Jay Baruchel goes to shake Jason Segel's hand, and Jason Segel goes, "Put that thing away," and then gives him a hug. So that's what I use now, but it used to be this. When he's explaining how to tip the cow, he says, and this is, I'll say this like when strategizing, just if something in a video game, I'll just say this aloud to myself. It's a 32 belly option on 2-on-2. Chucko. At one point, Rob Lowe calls Chris Farley Chucko.
Yep.
Hey, Chucko, that doesn't smell like mud.
My cousin Sarah still calls me and my sister Chucko, like to this day. Like, you know, she lives up in Ohio, and anytime we see her, she'll Chucko. That's what she knows us as. The paint chips thing, that was another one. Any kid who stayed up till 4 a.m. playing N64, drinking Mountain Dew at some point in their life asked their friends, "Did you eat a lot of paint chips as a kid?" The introduction of Michelle, where she tells Chris Farley to ignore RT. He's mad because he just recently found out what a loser he is. And Farley, in like a trailing off way, goes, "Yeah, what a loser he is." That's a big one. The drinking hand gesture the dude at the wedding reception makes about Zach Grainer when he says he basically wants to fuck Bo Derek. That's something I've done just to like,
I think that was my first big laugh in the movie.
His face is so good, and it's also like he's in the background while Zach Grainer's like reaching for the camera.
Yeah, he's like, "Richard, can you edit that?"
It'll cost you. Watch your language in front of the lady, punk. That's a good one. The part where Farley asks Spade, "Does this tie make me look fat?" I think is what he asks. He says, "No, your face does." Anytime I've been asked by someone to make them look fat, that's been my response, which has led to not many people asking me if they look fat. "Oh my God, we're burning alive," of course. Meta gets out and says, "Oh my God. What'd you do?" This one I used when we were in Tennessee not too long ago. It's rare now because people don't use paper maps anymore. But if the car you're driving has like the big screen with the GPS on it, it's prime opportunity when they're trying to figure out where we're going. When Spade says to Farley, it's like, "All right, well, let's find Moron. Moron's right here." And he puts his finger on Chris Farley's face. That's a good one to pull out if you can. And then when they hit the deer, when Farley's outside of that, he says, "Perhaps if you hadn't leaned over to insult me, you would have seen the thing." When they're in the meeting after they hit the deer, and Farley's trying to, it's not so much the thing of him botching the T-bone quote that's as funny to me as it is when David Spade just leans into his ear and goes, "You have derailed." That's, if I'm ever like beating someone's ass at a video game, that's a big one that I'll lean upon. I don't know why this one doesn't get more love, just in the general like Tommy Boy zeitgeist. But when they're driving afterwards and Farley's mocking Spade, "Watch and learn," he says. But that, you know, I understand because that's when the deer wakes up. And that results in but that was awesome. When I was in high school, these two blonde girls, I want to say one of them's name was Robin. I don't remember what the other one's was. Got into a fight in the hallway, and one girl just beat the shit out of the other one. Just like beat her down against the lockers. And then a teacher came to like pull them apart. And on the exit, the girl who had clearly won the fight already, like fucking Vanderlei Silva soccer kicked this girl in the face. Like she was down on all fours and she just fucking wound back and boom. And it made this nasty sound that I can still remember. And then everything kind of cleared out. And it was me and a few other guys standing in the hallway, just kind of in stunned silence at what we saw. And I think his name was Eli, this kid I went to school with. And one of the best timings and executions I've ever heard. The moment had simmered just long enough. And then he went, "I swear I've seen a lot of things in my life, but that was awesome." And it's one of the most perfect movie references I've ever heard in my life. And it's stuck with me, obviously, still to this day. The Auto Parts King jingle, I still will sing to myself just randomly. Fat guy in a little coat. I mean, come on. You're going to tell me right now you don't think I've done that fucking a dozen times in my life?
Have you actually ripped the jacket though?
I've had to, like, if it was like a torn piece of clothing already or something. Like, I never ruined anyone's like clothing, but you know, girls I've dated and stuff, it's definitely been easily a dozen times in my life I've sang "fat guy in a little coat" while wearing a coat that was way too small for me. When they're fighting over the radio, Chris Farley says, "This song sucks," and if I don't like a song, I will always say it in that inflection. if I see something really innocuous on the road and I'm driving, with or without company in the car, I'll go, hey, a prehistoric forest. That's probably my favorite delivery of a line Spade has in this movie. It's so good. My sister says this more than I do, and this is like when her regular vernacular. If she can't figure out what to eat, she'll just go, I'll just have a sugar packet or two, as Farley says when he's denied the wings in the restaurant. Helen, you look like a Helen. I don't meet Helens often, but I have used that line before. Tommy Want Wingy. That's not just me, like when I'm hungry for something. There's literally a restaurant in Austin called Tommy Want Wingy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a little too mainstream.
Yeah, for a cult movie, I guess you're right. If we're trying to figure out what to do for dinner, and this is again any group of people, all these references that I regularly use again will be to varying degrees of understanding. But if we're looking for something to eat, but we have like a backup option just in case, I will say that line where it goes, we still got that Meat Lover's pizza in the trunk. You know where the weight room is, Buddy Whack It. I'm trying to think of when I use this. It's mostly, it'll be like when I'm driving and someone in front of me is acting strange in traffic, or I think I said it the other day when playing The Last of Us when things got out of control. But the Richard, you're a riot when he's like running, like pissing on the side of the road. That's an exclamatory statement that's in the regular rotation. Need sleepy. No, go away. Let me sleep for the love of God. I've never really been in a situation where I could use that, but I've thought of that plenty, especially when like my fucking neighbors do yard work at 7:30 a.m. on Saturdays. The music montage we talked about. I have exited cars in a frantic fashion or like run out of a building knowing that my sister, like, you know, Brody or AJ on the outside going, bees, bees, chicken or chicken. That's... that we talked about. There's this part where Farley's in the airplane bathroom and he's on the ground and his like shoulders stuck in his jacket and he's like really like jerking hard with shoulder back and it's like hitting the wall. Just the way he does it. Again, these are all things that are just so burned into my brain that like if I'm in a car and I get like my seatbelt stuck or something, the way I'm maneuvering is me trying to copy the way he maneuvers when stuck in the airplane bathroom. That's just how many times I've seen this and how seared it is into my brain. When he says it's go time, the way he kind of like runs his tongue through his teeth and lips, that's I've done that a time or two. This will only take a second. When things are like, you know, have been dour in the past with me and, you know, something just adds to it, I have said to myself or no one in particular, could have done without that. This is a rare one, but I have used before. I thought we were watching cartoons when it cuts to that guy who's
So
like,
random.
yes, you know what I'm talking about, the old guy. And Rob Lowe's not good. And then the finally at the end, Rob, you were there.
RT, I lost my virginity to your daughter, for crying out loud. Rob, you were there.
So again, I have either used these at some point in my life. I have stories attached to them, or they're things that I still regularly say. I did not know it was that much just from this movie until I wrote it all down when taking my notes during this. So as you can see, this is a movie that is of importance to me. I was trying to think what would be in contention for another movie that I have as many references or quotes that are like part of just like my regular being. And it's probably Wayne's World or Wayne's World 2 and more morbidly, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think most people are way more likely to get "What'd you do?" than me going a whole family of Draculas. So I think sticking with Tommy Boy's gonna be okay. But yeah, this is a big one, man. I fucking love this movie. I wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way because I am really curious on your take on this, because in watching this, and I will always have a very strong sentimental attachment to Black Sheep. You know, my going to the movie theater with my dad to see it. But that last reviewing specifically for this show, I don't want to say it was eye-opening, but it really did settle in with me how just kind of what's the phrase I'm looking for here? It has kind of a sheen of cynicism over it. And then it also, much like Almost Heroes way more so, but it is kind of sad because, you know, that movie kind of led to one of his tailspins, and it's not a good movie. I enjoyed parts of it. I think some of it's funny. I have an attachment to it. I think this movie is very optimistic. And even if you want to do the whole thing of where Farley was in his life, this is where he had the world at his fingertips, you know? He was completely sober during this. And I think this movie is free of cynicism. And if you don't like Chris Farley, you don't like Chris Farley. You know, that's if someone came to me and was like, well, I just don't get it. I'm like, okay, well, then I don't know what to tell you. If Chris Farley's your problem with this, yeah, it ain't going to work for you. What I'm getting at is I can make a legitimate case to defend this movie in a way that I couldn't those other two I was just talking about. Even Beverly Hills Ninja, which is as funny as some of it is not a good movie. I think there's a serious case to be made that I would want to defend this movie if someone, you know, was like trashing it and saying it had no redeeming quality or it was dumb or, you know, Roger Ebert's not here to defend himself, but if he was, I'd be lucky. Like, yo, what's your fucking problem, man? So Julio, now I turn it over to you. We come into this knowing how you've felt about Farley movies in the past, and does this change anything? Did you enjoy yourself? Was this an easier viewing experience than those previous two entries?
I have to say first, Alex, that I'm a little jealous of your relationship with this movie. It's hearing you beat by beat just go through the movie, pointing out things that are part of your life is pretty impressive. This whole experience reminds me a little bit of, I might have told you about this, maybe even on the show. The first time I watched Pineapple Express, I was very excited because the trailer was a really good trailer from what I remember. And it had that song by MIA.
Oh, dude, not to steal your story here, but like that was one of the defining trailers of the 2000s, man. Yeah.
I think that the way where Seth Rogen and James Franco were in their careers, it was like, how could this not be just the funniest action comedy ever? And then I sat down and I watched it. I think I went by myself. Whatever it was not, you know, I watched and it just didn't do it for me. I was like, man, this is just not funny. So much stuff is not funny. And so much of it was just stuff that I was like, why are they? It was just one of those cases where I'd seen the trailer so much and I made it up in my head, and then what I watched was not that at all. and so for a long time, I was like, Pineapple Express sucks. And my friends liked it. My friend Drew, my friend Corey, you know, who's part of the Contrarians team now, because we hung out a lot. We you know, they would have it play in the background, and then we had friends who come over. It became one of those movies that not by my doing, but by my friends doing. It was always playing, and it became this thing where people would just quote it as he was playing, you know. It was like watching at the Draft House or whatever, you know, one of those quote alongs. And they would laugh, and then they would kind of like a little bit like what you were doing just now at the beginning of Real Talk, but it was just like 5-6 different people, and I'm just the only one there that's not. You know, the first few times,
got your arms folded.
Yeah, we're just kind of like ignoring it or nodding. I was like, yeah, it's funny. And then the more it happened, you know, I start associating it. I start forgetting my initial experience watching the movie, and instead it's replaced by, now this is a movie that plays when I'm hanging out with my friends, and not just that, but when I'm laughing with my friends. And then it's not just about the way that James Franco or Seth Rogen delivers a line, but it's also the way that, you know, Drew does the line, or my friend Kristen does the line, or whatever, you know. And so it takes into a life of its own. It definitely becomes a different thing. And I've never watched Pineapple Express again by myself, but I've had it playing in the background so many times. Probably not as many times as you watched Tommy Boy, but still, the fact is that there was a movie that my initial watch was not great. It was far from great. And then it slowly became something else, not just because of the movie, but also because of the social aspect of that movie, of watching that movie and how people appreciate it. People that definitely liked it more than I did to begin with. So all this long introduction to say that there is something that comes with Tommy Boy watching it. I kind of like said it at the Contrarians Corner, knowing that it's a movie that you really like, and knowing that I had to put myself through the exercise of being super positive about it to begin with. And this is one of those instances where our podcast gimmick actually works in the movie's favor, right? Because I have to find, like, the more genuine I can be about some things, you know, I can just exaggerate them, but in the end, you know, if I'm starting from something that's truthful, then it works even better. So I have to really try to find stuff that I really find funny or good. And then just as we're recording it, like I'll tell you, I had a fine time with the movie. It was definitely better than Black Sheep's, 100% better than Almost Heroes. But then the experience of recording Contrarians Corner and just retelling the same shit that I had just watched. And, it made me laugh just okay. But it was so much funnier when we were talking about it. My appreciation for it has increased just in the span of recording Contrarians Corner.
Outstanding.
So it's, I'm looking back at Tommy Boy just now as a positive experience, a good, I would say a good movie. I agree. It's not high art. And I think it's still not the kind of movie I go for, right? And there is some stuff. We've talked about Chris Farley before, twice on the show, and also in numerous tangents. Chris Farley being loud, Chris Farley being clumsy, man, it usually just doesn't do it for me. I was not kidding. Contrarians Corner, it works so much better when it's part of a bigger set piece. So if you haven't been clumsy, but there's other stuff going on, then that makes me laugh. So that's, in that sense, there's a big chunk of Tommy Boy that's never quite going to work for me. But then there's a lot of it that really did. And I had several moments where I laughed out loud. I was not kidding. Like whenever I called him out in Contrarians Corner, Rob Lowe losing his shirt, Dan Aykroyd exiting with just a really badass little speech.
Marty, find out where the police will be taking him. Send over a bottle of bubbly with a bucket of ice and a card. Have it say, tough break, get drunk on me, use the bucket to ice down your marbles, yours Z.
He's got weird hair. There's this thing to this movie that in my taking notes and trying to figure out what the conversation with you and I was going to be kind of came to light, which was they do a really good job of the typical Farley shit just becomes part of the scene. It's not the scene.
Yeah.
The best way I could do that is that montage of when everything's going well with their sales. That's a typical 90s montage right there. But they put in there that part where he walks into a glass door,
Yes.
And whereas like in Black Sheep, the whole scene would be he does that. Like when he falls down the hill, and that how long that takes to set up. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's a thing with the map, the map sequence that I praised in Contrarians Corner. He's destroying the car in the background, and David Spade is having his back and forth with the clerk.
It's funny you brought that up because I was like, that was going to be one of the make or break scenes I thought for you of like, because it's Farley doing just like unadulterated Farley stuff in the background, but it's while Spade's having that really like fucking sardonic conversation with the attendee who, and in that scene, both of those guys are playing it perfectly.
Yeah. The guy goes, Miles.
22 miles away.
It's no.
Get yourself a new map.
That stuff works. David Spade, there's a lot. I remember very little of Black Sheep. Mostly I just remember not finding it funny and it kind of dragging. This one didn't drag, and I think that I found David Spade so much funnier in this movie. I don't know if it's just that I like the character better or that him and Farley are playing off each other so much better than they did in Black Sheep. But I was actually looking forward to their scenes together, and because, it's a solid at least 20 minutes before they get on the road. And before that, you don't really see them together that much.
You have to get through the tragedy first.
Right, exactly. So, but it's coming. So I actually appreciated the build-up. It gave me this anticipation, right? Because he picks him up at the train station or whatever, and then they have a little bit of an interaction in the Farley's office. But then that's it. And I knew that this movie was going to get to a point where they were going to actually hang out and be part of the plot. And so once it got there, I was like, this is fun. This is a lot of fun. They had set up the David Spade character so well that I was just really excited to see how he played off Tommy, and also because I knew that the arc was going to be that they were going to become friends by the end, which is what happens, right? I think that the way that the movie's constructed, it's just about them being funny, so it's all very episodic. I think that there's the high art version of this movie, of course, is one that has like a more, I think, like smoother buildup of this friendship. Mm-hmm. Where you can just see every step they become closer, and maybe there are times where they realize they're getting a little too chummy and they back off. That's the high art version, but the version of the Peter Segal version is just like it's all set piece after set piece, and they're gonna be funny, and suddenly before you know it, they're friends at the end, right? Like when David Spade, they're sitting outside the bank. I don't know. It's when the bench falls.
Yeah, and I was about to say one of the things that I was kind of like, watching it this time around, David Spade's actually really good in that scene where he tells him, "You got a friend out of this," and Farley kind of looks over at him and he's kind of looking off just into the distance. And he's like, "And I know it doesn't mean much to you because you have so many, but I don't." It's really short and small, and it's one of those scenes though that if the acting was very poor in it, you would be like, "Oh, that was so fake," or whatever you want to say. At the same time, you're exactly right. It's not. It's not Leo going, "You called me from a dead guy's phone," but it's. Back to the high art point, one of the things I want to say, and it was the two examples that for whatever reason, the two examples that immediately came to mind for me, I guess getting to a bit of a spoiler, this is not an A+ for me. This is a solid A, but there is...
A+ in your heart.
Yes, exactly. Forever and always. There is... the two that came to mind were Bachelorette and Kingpin, because those are two movies that, I'm like two comedies specifically that I'm like over the moon about. And I think the part of it that makes those perfect to me as comedies is there is the human. I likes the human touch. There's the human aspect of it that's put into it without coming across as like try hard or transparent. I think Click is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And I remember like watching that and being, when they try to do that scene that's really sad, like, oh, he dies. It's
at the end, right? Where he's dying.
Yeah. It's like, dude, you were farting 2 seconds ago. Like
you were farting in David Hasselhoff's mouth.
Sure. I don't even remember that much, but like, Kingpin is an outlandish comedy. It is ridiculous. But there's something so real in the execution about Roy being ashamed of himself and like his redemption in life and whatnot, and him like wanting to find that with Vanessa Angel. And Bachelorette's obviously extremely over the top, but all those characters are very human. And Tommy's human. The parts, the sequence of him like when he's with Michelle after his dad's death and he's still really like emotional and rattled about it. That's real. But this movie doesn't want to go further than that. It doesn't want to, what did we learn? How am I going to be now? It's just good, feel good comedy. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to know for whatever reason what like I decipher as like the elite tier comedies versus really, really good ones and memorable ones, it usually involves some sort of like human issue or problem that we're trying to fix or address along the way. And I think the two movies I picked that I view as like two of the pinnacles of the art form of the last 30 years are two of the more ridiculous ones. So that's kind of why I singled them out. And this is great though. And man, if Farley, he's not doing much in this, but you always, at least I do, when you watch his movies, you wonder like what maybe could have become. And it makes it even more of a bummer that this was like what started his run. Cause after this, then it became Black Sheep, Beverly Hills Ninja, Almost Heroes. And by Almost Heroes, he's like a caricature of what he does in this movie. You know what I mean? And that's a bummer. But we have this, and yeah, I'm not sitting here trying to tell you right now that he could have been Philip Seymour Hoffman or something, but I think this movie, more than anything else he did, there's little twinkles and shimmers of potential promise that it's kind of sad we never got to see flesh out.
Yeah, he's the moments where he calms down, which are, there's more than a few in the movie. Those were so welcome when I was watching it. And look, I can appreciate like the thing in the bathroom, right? When he's just trying to change in the tiny airplane bathroom. I mean, that has its own kind of brilliance, and I like that. But then there's just the fact that you can have that in the movie, and you can also buy the moments where he's just more serious and kind of takes charge and addresses the people from the company and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's where you have good balance, and that never happens in Almost Heroes, for example. Just to think of the most recent thing, of course, that movie's pitched at ridiculousness the entire time, right? That movie has no heart. That movie's just a cartoon from beginning to end. So maybe the comparison is not too fair, but it's still, right? If you're talking about what works for me in a Chris Farley movie, it was like, oh, well, give me a movie where he gets to this thing that I don't like that much, but also balances out with a little more grounded scenes. And yeah, that scene that he has with Michelle in the boat and the relationship he has with his dad. I mean, I think that is kind of the genius move.
But right now, I'm gonna need you, Tommy boy, to get this place going!
Oh, for me, Dad?
Yeah, you, Tommy boy! Get him!
Dad, I really don't think... Okay.
They cast Brian Dennehy, whether it was to have a callback to 10 with Bo Derek or not, but the fact that they got this guy to be Tommy's dad, and in just 2-3 scenes, they established the relationship so well that you really feel bad for Tommy when he loses his dad. I mean, there's this shot that was like, what the fuck? This movie is just, it shouldn't be having this shot, which is like after they bury Brian Dennehy and then Tommy just kind of like walks off. And so the camera is still as he walks away. You know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah. I mean, that shot is, dare I say, beautiful. It doesn't belong in the Tommy Boy that I have in my head from, the movie that won Best On-Screen Duo at the MTV Movie Awards. So I think that they do a really good job of building up the emotional stuff so that when it gets really silly, you still have the emotional stuff going in the background and you care.
Yeah, and as we've been saying, it is the 90s feel-good, comedy that you best believe includes the scene of all the workers celebrating as one back at the factory when he sells the brake pads. Julio made a beautiful segue there to the 1996 MTV Movie Awards, which will come back up as this journey rages on. Hosted by Ben Stiller and Janine Garofalo from Walt Disney Studios in Burbank, California on Saturday, June 8th of 1996. Man, I was reading over these before we started, and these are even more insane than the 95 ones, or 93, excuse me, that we read when discussing The Fugitive. So Julio did go ahead and let us know that Chris Farley and David Spade won the award for Best On-Screen Duo for Tommy Boy. Let's just go over who they beat out, shall we? The other nominees. Martin Lawrence and Will Smith in Bad Boys.
Boo.
Ice Cube and Chris Tucker in Friday. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman in Seven, because Seven and Tommy Boy are very similar movies. And Tom Hanks and Tim Allen in Toy Story.
Oh, man.
Dude, it is insane. We do this all the time when we go through these movies, especially in the 90s when, we think back to when we were younger and, in our mind, it's just these pool of movies. And, we talk about sometimes I'm a bit more of a nerd for that than you are of knowing dates and releases. But Tommy Boy, Bad Boys, Friday, Seven, and Toy Story all came out in the same year.
I haven't seen Friday. I know you keep telling me I have to watch it and someday it will happen.
Friday is wonderful.
But I just now, as you were reading them, I kept picturing, okay, let's swap the duos. And so you have David Spade and Chris Farley in Seven. Who is who? Who's the wild card? Farley would be Pitt, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he would have
David
to be.
Spade is the more serious Morgan Freeman. And then who is Woody and who is Buzz? Farley would be Buzz.
No, Spade would have to be Buzz because Farley would have to freak out about you're a toy. I can't. I don't know if I can really do Farley, but and Spade being really pedantic and very dry, like Buzz is in the first one.
You're right. And then I don't want to say that Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are interchangeable in Bad Boys because they're not, but also they kind of are because I don't give a shit about either of them.
I know you don't like Bad Boys, but
wouldn't it be a better movie if you had David Spade and Chris Farley as the cops?
I don't know if that specific movie, like with fucking Tia Leone, but I am curious of the alternate history where Michael Bay directed a movie that was a Farley Spade duo. Chris Farley was nominated individually for Best Comedic Performance. He was beat out by Jim Carrey for Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls. He was nominated alongside Adam Sandler for Happy Gilmore, Chris Tucker for Friday, and Alicia Silverstone for Clueless.
Oh, that's Best Comedic Performance. So it's just men and women fighting it out.
It sees no gender or sex. Yes, sir.
American Utopia. I've just been very positive about the movie and Farley also, but man, Alicia Silverstone should have taken that.
Chris Tucker, out of this lineup, Chris Tucker's so fucking good in Friday, man. Happy Gilmore, I think, is my favorite Sandler comedy, and you know what I mean by saying Sandler comedy,
right?
But I don't know if Christopher McDonald would be the MVP of that movie. The 1996 MTV Movie Awards, Spade and Farley did walk away with the golden bucket of popcorn. Sadly, the female side of the equation was not treated so well, as Bo Derek was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actress.
Probably an overreaction, but at the same time, I wouldn't point to her as a high point of the movie.
No, but she like honestly, collectively may have 12 lines in the movie.
I mean, this movie's so innocent and so wide-eyed that I get why they wouldn't. Going back to something that I brought up in Contrarians Corner, that's why it's a little bit jarring when they go with the masturbation joke with David Spade.
Yeah.
Because it suddenly brought me back to like, oh, people have sex in this movie, like in this universe, because it's just so, it's so fluffy through most of the story. And Bo Derek kissing Rob Lowe as a big reveal that they're not mother and son and instead they're lovers. It was jarring in a similar way, except that one made me laugh because I was just like, what the fuck? Right? But that was like the one time that her character was interesting, beyond the meta aspect of, oh, it's Bo Derek, right?
That's so awesome. Like in my brain, I literally can't compute that someone wasn't aware of that like plot point in the movie, because I just assume everyone has seen this. So 30 years later, you getting duped by Bo Derek and Rob Lowe's subplot is fantastic to me. Love it. I honestly, I wasn't even sure if he was going to be a villain, because he was very different from Tommy, and he was kind of standoffish and he looked bored and unimpressed by Sandusky. But he wasn't, once the dad died, he even looked like he was a little concerned, and he was, we went several minutes without a scene where he was shown as plotting behind Tommy's back. And so I thought maybe he was just going to be sort of a reluctant ally down the line. But then finally we got the reveal, and I was like, oh no, he's a bad guy. And it's just kind of funny that they got Rob Lowe, and then they're like, all right, we have to give him something to do, even though he's not part of the road trip. So they have that really random scene, or in Contrarians Corner, you were like, what could we cut out of this? I would cut the scene where he tries to destroy the trucks, and then the dog comes at him. I mean, I laugh because of the payoff of him with his... Yeah. And then the next time you see him, he has that bandage over his ear. So that's funny. Like he's fucking Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, he needed to like raise his arm after the dog attacked him. But that's, it just feels so disconnected from the rest of the movie, because they really, all he had to do was like sit back and wait for Chris Farley to fail. But they're like, well, let's give him something to do. We have Bo Derek and Rob Lowe for a couple more days on set, and they just come up with this stuff. I mean, it's not like the movie's long, but out of all the things in the movie, I think that's the one bit that feels like doesn't really belong, or rather that I could do without.
Not good.
Do you care to know who she was nominated alongside for Worst Supporting Actress at the 1996 Golden Raspberry Awards?
Well, it's not going to be Alicia Silverstone. I know that.
It is not. It is someone we've dealt with in the past. I'll tell you who took it home, first of all, was Madonna for 4 Rooms.
Okay.
Alongside Bo Derek nominated was Amy the Talking Gorilla from Congo, Lynn Tucci from Showgirls, and Gina Gershon from Showgirls, which, if I remember correctly, I think Gina Gershon was one of the points we were most complimentary of in that movie.
She gets it. Nobody else gets it, but she gets it.
No, that was the year, though, Showgirls dominated. Paul Verhoeven got his worst director, worst screenplay. We covered all this in our Showgirls episode. While we're on Bo Derek, because I don't know if we're ever going to come back to it, I just need to give a shout out to Kevin Nash, the pro wrestler. Julio, you're not going to get this reference at all, and I don't think any of our international listeners will. There's got to be someone out there who's a football fan that'll get it, but Bo Schembechler was a player and coach. He's famous for his time at the University of Michigan, the Wolverines. And he passed away in 06, 07, early 07, late 06. Anyway, it was a big thing in the sports world when he died. And the thing I'll always remember from that period of time was on the TNA pay-per-view, or the TV show that week, Kevin Nash was managing these wrestlers, Alex Shelley and Austin Starr. And they had this big tag match or whatever, and he put his hand out like you go team in that manner. He goes, all right, boys, let's win one for Bo. And Alex Shelley goes, Schembechler? And he goes, no, Derek. And then they like all raise their hands together. So that's my Bo Derek story. Just kind of circling back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, being that this was 1995. Farley, this is he and Sandler had already been fired from SNL. So this was, Sandler had taken off with his movies, and this was Farley's attempt to follow suit. This was unfortunately the peak, the high point. Man, you want to talk about one of the biggest what ifs as far as he goes specifically is because he was Shrek originally. We've talked about that, right?
Right. I'm pretty sure we must have been the Almost Heroes episode
where he almost had everything. Like it was all in the can, the recording and whatnot. You think about that movie and the sensation that it was. And if he had been able to like really land getting clean, he may be kind of today he could potentially be what, you and I were talking about, like this ball of promise, and we could have seen what it became. But yeah, I just want to end, it's a sad story, the Chris Farley one, but on a positive note, I think this movie is not just in my opinion, but from a whole fucking generation of people is beloved and viewed as like the high point of his career and, what he could offer. So as sad as his ending is, and as sad as that makes watching some movies like Black Sheep and very much so almost Heroes, this is still there. This is still out there. One of the big things, I don't know if you noticed this all, Julio, he's a big dude, but he's not like concerningly obese in this the way that he kind of was in Almost Heroes in the last year of his life. It's
he looks healthy compared to in Almost Heroes. And I mean, of course, right, you don't want to make assumptions. You're like, well, that's what makeup and all that stuff is for. He's supposed to, Almost Heroes is a period piece and whatever, and this is modern times. It makes sense that he would look more put together. But no, I mean, especially when you have the context of his life and where he was headed. Yeah, he just looks so young and full of energy here. And in Almost Heroes, he looked tired, and at times it didn't seem like he was having a good time.
Yeah.
Compared to here, where it seems like he's having a ball, like him and everybody else in the movie. So yeah, it's a bummer. At the same time, I get what you're saying, right? No matter what, you still have this one. And it still works. Here's like one of the craziest things. Whenever I watch a movie for the show, I warn my wife. I'm like, all right, this is going to be happening in the living room. And if you want to, I can go upstairs and watch it on the TV upstairs. It's, if it's a movie that she knows, she'll join me sometimes, like when we did The Princess Bride or the Spider-Man movies. And if she really has no interest, she'll put her headphones on, or she'll just be in the kitchen doing stuff. And every now and then she'll like pop in, and Kelly, I mean, she could be pretty direct if she thinks something's stupid or something annoys her, so she'll let me know. So I couldn't wait for her to like make some sort of snarky remark about Tommy Boy, and I warned her. I was like, this is a really dumb movie from the 90s. And I didn't even know she was paying attention, but I was just watching it. And then at some point, the scene at the boat happens between Tommy and Michelle. And then the kids start yelling and like heckling him, and he keeps yelling back at them. And then they finally get to the point where Michelle stands up and yells at them.
Listen up, you little spazoids! I know where you live and I've seen where you sleep. I swear to everything holy that your mothers will cry when they see what I've done to you. And
then Kelly goes, I hear her go from the kitchen. She's like, oh, now he's going to love her forever. She didn't stick around for the whole movie. She was just there, I don't know what she was doing, but once she was done, she just went upstairs. But the fact that it kind of caught her attention enough to where she was, following what was happening, and then felt the need to interject with something that was not negative about the movie. Like, I call that one of the biggest wins for Tommy Boy ever.
Absolutely.
Because it's not the kind of movie that my wife would normally give any time to. So that was funny. And, it's kind of reflective, I guess, of my experience watching it too. As we wrap up, you teased it. What's the deal with Rob Lowe not being on the credits?
So the situation was he was contractually obligated to Stephen King's The Stand. And he just kind of agreed to do the movie because he was friends with Farley. And just due to classic Hollywood contracts bullshit, he couldn't be billed at anything else during that period in time. So like the idea was they couldn't tell him not to take any movies, but he couldn't be credited in anything.
He's like, well, watch me.
Yeah, exactly. What's this? I don't give a shit. Have you seen The Stand? Did you talk about that recently?
No, we talked about Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot. That's right.
I haven't watched The Stand. I haven't even read The Stand, but I know it's one of the big ones.
Yeah. And this is something that with as many times I've seen this movie, I did not know that until today when I was looking into things just a little bit further.
Problem mystery solved. I'm going to give you my final big laugh, Alex, because it didn't come up during Contrarians Corner. The complete opposite of how jarring I found the David Spade peeping on that woman by the pool when he is pretending to be the maid knocking the door and trying to wake Chris Farley up, and he keeps offering things. And he's like, "Do you want a mint for under the pillow? Do you want chocolates? Do you want me to jerk you off?"
And that like wakes Farley up, and what the hell kind of hotel is this?
Yes. Yeah, it's just the perfect build. Because at first I was kind of rolling my eyes. I was like, I get it. It's funny because he's putting on this funny feminine voice. But then it just got so outrageous. It made me laugh.
And then lastly, I just want to verify you were being sincere. The RS2, the payoff to them singing that is very funny. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like the same thing where they're doing the REM song. And I kind of nodded and didn't quite roll my eyes, but I was like, yeah, I get it. Nobody can sing along to that song. Haha. And then they cut to them singing in Spanish. And I was not kidding. It's a song I know. I mean, it's not music I like, but I remember that song from my childhood. And it was kind of like when Rob Lowe and Bo Derek kissed. I was like, what the fuck? And they're so into it.
I forgot to mention that earlier. That was my alarm for at least a year in college on my cell phone to wake me up in the morning. Was AS2 because of that movie.
That's amazing.
All right, Julio. So, moment of truth. I'm obviously not expecting anything off the rails here, but an A for me. I feel like I kind of went into detail a bit earlier about elite comedies and what kind of will push them over the edge for me. But this is still a movie that's of great importance to me. And as I said from the jump, it's something I feel I could make a strong case for in its defense if need be, and something I think is genuinely good. So an A from me, which would translate to, about 4 stars or so. Big part of my history as a movie fan and my story is, a lover of comedy and film. So thumbs up and approval. Julio, what are you giving this?
It's crept up to 3.5
nice.
In the course of this recording. I think it was done like I was between 2.5 and 3 when the movie was over. And then by the end of Contrarians Corner, I was definitely at least a 3 and now at like 3.5. I want to make it clear to our listeners, though, that you've done a really, really good job explaining your connection to this movie to where your score is not misleading at all. In my case, I hope that I made it clear also that I can't at this point be entirely objective about it. And this is the 3.5 is compounding the experience of watching it and it being better than I hoped, plus also recapping it, being funny about it in Contrarians Corner, plus talking about it seriously in real talk. And it's just a whole ball of joy that has improved the movie. Would I enjoy it as much if I was just watching it by myself? I mean, I'll probably laugh at some of the things, but then there's some stuff that it's just funnier when you're talking about it with someone. And so knowing some of our listeners, some of our patrons, like I can't imagine good friend of ours, Ben Murray from Filmbusters, like sitting down to watch Tommy Boy because you gave it an A and I gave it 3.5. And then just being stone-faced the entire time. So be warned. I mean, at the same time, I kind of feel like anybody that sits down to watch Tommy Boy has at least an idea of what they're in for. Because Chris Farley, it's larger than life. And the Chris Farley, David Spade partnership in a way, even though it's only 2 movies, I think it also has some sort of transcendence in pop culture. So you can't be truly surprised if you sit down to watch Tommy Boy and you didn't think it was going to be your kind of thing, and then it ends up not being your kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as this experience, I came out very much on the positive, so 3.5. We'll save this for the video, Alex, but I really, after watching this and having watched Black Sheep, I was hit with this kind of this sense of, man, it's a shame that there's not a third movie. Because, you know, you're used to trilogies, and you would hope that there was one more where they maybe come back from the failure that was Black Sheep. Just get back to the roots of what made it funny. So I'm going to think about a little bit more about that, and also about something that probably came up during Almost Heroes, which was like, would this movie be better with David Spade instead of Matthew Perry? So we'll talk about that on the video. Keep an eye out for that.
Oh my God. New guy's in the corner puking his guts out.
Well, that was Tommy Boy. That went swimmingly for me because I was worried that I was going to have to stick my flag in the ground and go hell for leather with you. And we had a nice chat. What is up next? Is it going to bring as nice of a chat?
I don't know. I think it's a movie that neither of us has seen. We're going back to 1992, so that'll be the 1993 MTV Movie Awards. This is My Cousin Vinny. Have you seen it, Alex?
Once when I was maybe in college or high school. Not enough to really remember much about it, to be honest. The biggest relation to My Cousin Vinny is Seinfeld at this point, so I'm looking forward to watching it of adult mind and taking it all in. But Marissa Tomei, Joe Pesci, Ralph Macchio.
Yeah. Best breakthrough performance for Marissa Tomei. And of course, best supporting actress at the Oscars. So that's coming up next. It's fresh, obviously 85%. So we'll be nitpicking it at first. We'll do everything we didn't do to Tommy Boy. We'll do to My Cousin Vinny. And we'll see if it survives.
As one does, yes.
Yes, as one does. And then as far as the patron stuff, this month we have our bonus episode courtesy of patron Ben Murray, the guy that we just outed as somebody that wouldn't like Tommy Boy probably. We're going to be doing Steel Magnolias as an exclusive bonus episode on Patreon. As far as video reviews, like we said in the last episode, we're catching up. Alex still has to do Sultan. I still have to do Barry Lyndon. But if you want videos, we did put up one where we show you the behind the scenes on how we came up with the lineup for the summer event. So if you want to see Alex and I drafting MTV Movie Award winners and nominees for the summer, then it's a nice 30-minute romp that you can watch on our Patreon channel. And then for After Hours, Alex, we kind of skipped our recap from your trip to Vegas because we had to do a tie-in into The Fugitive last episode. But I think the time has come, right? Tell me exactly, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours?
Yeah, I'll just be recapping my my jaunt to Vegas for WrestleMania week. It was likely took years off my life, so be recapping that in painstaking detail. It's talk about hanging out with our friend Joe Hilbert as well. So some known Contrarian contributors along the way as well.
I can't wait to hear about Joe not reacting to any of your Tommy Boy references.
Yeah, it's sad. Joe's a little bit younger than myself. I'm not sure Tommy Boy would have been in his wheelhouse, but Joe's got a good sense of humor.
Black Sheep, you'll get that.
I don't know about that either. But yeah, just the recap of Vegas, and my glowing review of Reign of Fire, which I watched on the flight there.
Sold. On my end, Alex, I will be telling you, I'm not going to recap. My mom came to visit while you were in Vegas. The alternate thing that was happening that month was that my mom came to visit for a couple of weeks, and we did binge a couple of shows that need to be singled out. So I watched The Pit, which is the new medical drama starring Noah Weil from ER, but really for the true ones from Donnie Darko. And then that was on HBO. And then its lighter counterpart, I think it's called The Pulse, maybe just Pulse. They're both dramas set on an emergency room, just a bunch of doctors being very antagonistic towards each other or dating each other. Competing against each other. It's a lot of fun. It'd been a while since I watched medical dramas of any sort, and then suddenly it just happened. We got hooked on these two, and it was great. So I'll tell you about it. Maybe you'll decide to watch one or both. But that's it. That's for the After Hours. If any of that sounds interesting, go check out our Patreon channel, patreon.com/contrarianprime. Now, let's get out of here, Alex.
Let it go. That's what he says to David Spade when he's like, don't tell anyone I'm bald at the end. He goes, let it go.
Yeah, like the first thing he's going to tell Michelle is that, did you know he's bald?
Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarians sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Corey Ari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't care who you're seeing or how much money he makes a year or who he knows. Just promise me you'll